So these are the main PC components right here in front of you guys to see, and in today's video I'll be explaining to you guys each and every component that's displayed here and what its purpose is, how it looks like, and a lot more info on it as well. So without further ado, let's get started, and let's just go from this side and just continue going like this, and we'll start off with the PSU, or the power supply unit. Now the power supply unit, the main purpose of the power supply unit is to keep all of the components inside of the PC nice and powered up. What that means is that the power supply takes the electricity from the charger, or the place where you've basically connected the PSU or power supply, and it then pulls that electricity, and with that electricity then transmits it to the other components and powers all of the other components. Mainly the motherboard and the graphics card, but also all of the other components as well, but like the motherboard and the graphics card are most of the time the main users, alongside the CPU as well. So yeah, the PSUs or power supply units come in many different standards and versions and powers and voltages and whatnot. There's 200 watt, there's 400 watt, there's 700 watt, heck there's even 1,000 and more watt versions. There's mini ATX, ATX, mega ATX versions of the PSUs slash power supplies. And yeah, right here, this one that I've got right here is a from as you can see right here, it is a 700 watt ATX switching power supply from Powerbox, which, while isn't the most high quality power supply, certainly does the job very well. So yeah, that's the power supply done. Next up, let's move on to the graphics card. Now this graphics card right here, if you guys are curious which graphics card this is, it's the Radeon RX 5500, the AMD Radeon RX 5500, and this graphics card is really good. Like I use this in my main PC, and it's really good. It's a really good graphics card. So yeah, but what is the main purpose of the graphics card? The main purpose of the graphics card is helping the CPU help with generating and loading and doing similar tasks with data in games and whatnot that needs to be loaded up. Of course, you can also buy an APU, which is basically a CPU with integrated graphics, but those integrated graphics won't be as strong, and they don't have the advantage of switching. So that means that, for example, if let's say the CPU slows down, or if the CPU goes under heavy load, it can transfer its load onto the graphics, or at least a part of its load onto the graphics card, if there's a dedicated graphics card, of course. Now there's a lot of different graphics cards, a lot of different brands, so AMD, Nvidia, heck even Intel. At least in my opinion, among the best are Nvidia and AMD, but if you're going for budget, then absolutely Intel, they're amazing budget cards. So yeah, there's also different kinds of versions with VRAM. So you've got 4GB, 8GB, 16GB, 24GB. I think the most I've heard about are 26 or I think 28 gigabyte VRAM, gigabyte VRAM cards. And of course, the more VRAM you have, the more graphically intensive, or like the more intensive data the graphics card will be able to handle at once, and the more amount of data the graphics card will be able to handle at once. So yeah, but with that out of the way, Now there's of course different kinds of connectors. You've got 2x3, 2x6, 2x8 connectors. You have 6-pin connectors, 4-pin connectors for graphics cards. Or heck, for example, you have like this is an example right here. In some graphics cards, you don't even have a connector. So for example, in this graphics card right here, you don't have a connector. It's just this small connector right here powering the fans, and when the graphics card pulls electricity or power directly from the PCIe slot, or like the PCIe area. So yeah, but now that we're done with the graphics card, let's move on to the RAM. So I've got this RAM right here. The main purpose of the RAM is storing data temporarily. Now what does that mean? That means that a piece of data, let me turn this around, there we go. A piece of data, for example, could be stored on the RAM. So for example, let's say if you're running some kind of process or task or whatever, and the RAM has to process or take some kind of data. Once you close that process, or once you turn off your PC or anything similar, the RAM practically erases all of that data, because it's just temporary data that the RAM only temporarily needs to load. Now a PC of course cannot run without RAM. I've seen people say that the PC can just switch, you know, from that the PC can just switch from the RAM to the main disk storage. But while it can do that, it's impossible for any PC to run without any RAM. So yeah, nowadays the most recommended are 16 gigabytes of RAM, but still there's also many different variants. So there's 8 gigabytes, 4 gigabytes, 2 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, 12 gigabytes, 24 gigabytes, and so on and so forth. I think the most I've seen is around 256 gigabyte RAM sticks. So yeah, you've also got different kinds of DDRs, so DDR 2, 3, 4, and so on. And the newer the DDR, of course, the newer the newer motherboards and the newer paired components it will support. So yeah, there's also different kinds of brands as well. So you've got HyperX Fury, you've got other kinds of brands. So for example, you've got ADATA as well making RAM, and so on and so forth. And the best, at least in my opinion, are Kingston HyperX Fury RAMs, and they're the most high quality and the best in my opinion. And the grade, like the biggest balance, or like the best balance of budget to performance is 2x8 gigabytes or 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. Why am I saying this? Well, it's because there's something called dual channel. RAM has something called dual channel, which is basically when you put, for example, right here, I only have one stick of RAM, right? But if I had two identical sticks, if I had like another identical stick to this one, and if I put them in, they would work much more quickly if they were different kinds of, if they were two different kinds of sticks, or if it was just one stick like it is here. So yeah, so if you have, like, let's say one stick of 16 gigabyte RAM, and if you have two sticks of 8 gigabytes of RAM, which are exactly the same, so they all have like the exact same model, DDR model, everything, producer, stuff like that, then the 2x8 sticks will run much faster than the 1x16 stick. So yeah. Next up, we've got the CMOS battery. Now, what does the CMOS battery do? While most beginners think that this CMOS battery is insignificant or whatever, you know, that it's just a big nuisance and that it's not necessary for producers to add this, it's actually a really important part of the whole computer parts components ecosystem, because this powers the BIOS. And I mean, even a beginner should know that without a BIOS, you can't really do anything on your PC. The BIOS is like the main heart, the main control panel of your PC. And this CMOS battery right here, so if I get a closer look at it right here, so this CMOS battery powers exactly that BIOS. Without the CMOS battery, as far as I know, you can't really power the BIOS properly or anything similar. Now, I'm not really specialized in CMOS batteries, and I don't really know much about CMOS batteries, although I do know there's different kinds of quality certifications, there's different kinds of sizes, they come from different kinds of countries. Most come from Japan, Malaysia, Taiwan, and they're the most like this one I think comes from Japan. This one comes from Japan, and the most high quality ones I've seen are from like Japan and Taiwan. So yeah, and the best ones that I've used. So yeah, the next. So now that we're done with the CMOS battery, we're gonna move on to the next, which isn't really a component, but I still think is a very important part of any PC build, and that is a thermal pad. Now, this is a thermal pad. I know it's all scratched up and has quite a lot of dust on it. I know it's been quite used, and also it hasn't been used in a while at the same time as well. I used to use this like in the past, but yeah, now it's not really used anymore, and so that's why it's been building up quite a lot of dust. But this is a thermal pad. It's like a soft, sticky sort of mushy. It has like a sort of sticky, mushy, substancey feel to it. And what is this even used for? This is used to cool your SSD. So if you don't have like some kind of like steel passive cooler, or like heck, even nowadays where some people add like a water cooler or like some kind of fan cooler to their SSD, then this is your next best and cheapest choice, thermal pads. Now, thermal pads are typically added right here, right underneath, or some people I've seen also they also add them right above the SSD, and that basically helps the SSD dissipate that heat that it generates, because of course SSDs are really small and they generate a lot of heat and so on. Now, thermal pads, we of course have lots of different brands, qualities and stuff like that. I'm not really specialized because I haven't used them that much, but they're pretty useful. And yeah, now speaking of SSDs, here we go. The next component is an SSD, and this right here specifically, to be more specific, is a NVMe M.2 SSD. Now, this right here is a Samsung SSD, and while we're at Samsung makes the best of these SSDs. So Samsung and Kingston make the best NVMe M.2 SSDs, at least in my opinion and from experience as well. So yeah. And what does the NVMe SSD do, you might ask? It stores data from the PC, so much more bigger, more important, more permanent data onto here. Now, this is quite literally, now that data could quite literally be any data which isn't temporary, or which isn't like small or extremely unimportant. So yeah, literally all kinds of datas. And so and the NVMe SSD is the fastest kind of disk and storage device amongst its family of different kinds of storage devices. So you've got this NVMe M.2 SSD, then you've got an HDD, which is a hard disk drive, then you've got a normal like disk SSD, which is an SSD if it was in the form of an HDD or like something similar. I don't really know how to explain it with my own words. And this is amongst the fastest. This is quite literally around 2 or 3 times faster than a disk form SSD, and it's metaphorically said light years faster than a HDD or hard disk drive. So yeah, one thing that I did forget to mention, and I'm very sorry about that, I did forget to mention something about not just the NVMe SSD, but all of these components which have these slots right here, so similar to the PCI on the graphics card, and that is that you should not be touching these or rubbing them or anything similar, because that can cause static electricity, or basically static, to form up inside of there. And if static electricity or static forms up inside of there, then it could cause some then the damage could vary quite a lot, but from experience nothing really happened, but it could cause a lot of damage to some components, and the damage can range from just some small, very temporary damage to literally your component dying. So yeah, be careful about touching and rubbing these spots and whatnot. Now that we're done with the NVMe M.2 SSD, we can move on to the big boy right here, amongst the biggest, if not one of the biggest components, which is the motherboard. The motherboard right here, which I've already equipped a cooler and underneath there a processor to, is one of, if not the most important components of a PC. Without this, you can literally not start building a PC, let alone actually run it or, you know, fully finish it or anything similar. The motherboard is the central hub where all the components connect and unite together to then form the PC, and it's this hub where almost everything united from all of the different components come together and, you know, work together, basically, with my own words, or metaphorically, I guess. And yeah, a motherboard has these RAM slots. You have the PCIe slot, the Wi-Fi card slot, or you can even install those like SSDs, you know, those Wi-Fi card looking SSDs. Then you got the SSD slot right here as well. This is the motherboard chip underneath here. Then you've got the ports as well. If we go around here, you got the ports down here as well. And then these are just these, and then for example these right here, there are just different kinds of transistors, micro wires, microchips, and stuff like that. The BIOS as well, I think that's the BIOS if I'm not wrong. And then of course one of the most important things, the front side panel, where your front panel buttons actually connect to the built PC. So yeah, I did forget to also mention at the PSU, but I'll just mention it here. You do have these slots right here, which are 24-pin slots. On some motherboards, you will also get a 20-pin slot. If it's a 20-pin slot, then it does not come with this. So with this extra little piece right here. But if it's a 24-pin like this one right here, it does come with the extra little wire piece, like attachable wire piece, I guess. So yeah, we did talk in quite a lot more detail about the motherboard in another video, or I think that's among the first videos I ever made, so you can go check them out. So yeah, underneath the cooler we have a processor. Now the processor is basically what it stands for. Like, its name literally says what it does. It's a central processing unit, or aka CPU. The CPU does most, if not almost all, of the major processes and different kinds of processing related tasks and stuff like that inside of the PC. There's loads of different brands for CPUs, different kinds of generations, models, different kinds of specifications, and like there could be a whole video dedicated to CPUs, which I might probably do in the future if you guys are interested in seeing a video like that. But long story short, CPUs are extremely important, and they're like the main heart/brain of a PC, I guess. Now let's move on to the final two pieces of components or hardware, whatever you want to call them, which are actually just bonuses that I've added because I really felt like these are also important parts of any setup that should be included. The first one is this one, a USB internet or LAN adapter. What does this do? Well, a lot of people, funnily enough, make the mistake of thinking that this adapter is like some kind of adapter which magically gives you internet or something like that, but that's not actually true. What the adapter does is, once you connect it to your motherboard, it basically allows you to connect wirelessly to any internet. So if your motherboard does not support LAN or Bluetooth drivers, or if it doesn't have any, or if it doesn't support it or anything similar, then this helps with that and additionally adds that feature to your motherboard. There's different kinds of brands and stuff like that, but I personally like to use TP-Link the most. So and yeah, there's not really much else you can say about these fellas. Let's move on to the final component, which is this, the DVI-E cable. Now this is a quite old display cable. It's used for monitors, and it's a display cable. It literally says in the name. It's used for monitors and for displays, so you can like display stuff to the monitor and like from the PC to the monitor. This is how they look like up from a close, and these cables are generally not as used anymore. Generally, HDMI and other newer similar display ports and cables have taken their place, and in turn, these guys have been basically left unpopular, but still used by quite a lot of people to this day who have like older TVs or monitors as their main choice of display. But yeah, guys, that is it. We have covered most of the main and essential PC components. Without these components, you cannot make a proper PC, with the exception of, let's say, the graphics card maybe, and the Wi-Fi adapter or the thermal pad. But all of these other components, you will need them, trust me. So yeah, I hope this video has come in use, and I hope that you've learned something for whenever you're going to be building your new dream PC, or at least hopefully.